Greetings, Bill Clinton. I am watching the Ministry of Propaganda. You are like, share and subscribe. You must.
Good evening, folks. In line with this week's episode on the coronation of King Charles III, the Lord himself has bestowed upon me the humble title of the Right and Honorable Knight of the Order of the Thistle, Richardicus Nixonium, Victus Bellorum Indochina, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the seas. You can stop kneeling now. I accept your submission and sovereignty. Now let's start with some international news. Of course, in the UK, the Brits had themselves a coronation of King Charles III, the first in 70 years. But who cares about the cost of living crisis, right? It was a spectacle nonetheless. And our hosts will have more of this in a moment. Moving on to Sudan, 2 weeks of fighting have reignited violence in Darfur. There have been evacuations of civilians aided by Saudi Arabia and tentative ceasefires across the country. It's still a messy situation, folks. Now, let's talk about Russia. Russia accused the Ukrainian government of orchestrating a drone attack on President Putin's official residence this week. Video was released of 2 drones exploding over 2 parts of the Kremlin. And just to add fuel to the fire, Prigozhin, the leader of the mercenary company Wagner, released a profanity-laced video complaining about not having enough ammo to finish the fight in Bakhmut. Meanwhile, Ukrainian soldiers are gearing up for a spring offensive. They're under pressure to show success in boosting morale, shoring up Western support, and reclaiming stolen territory. Good luck with that. Over in the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the son of a dictator, began a visit to the U.S. The White House has been cozying up to him as a regional ally, sending a message to China. How's that for American values, huh? And speaking of American finances, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warned that the U.S. could run out of money to pay its bills by June 1st if lawmakers don't reach a deal on debt. Great. Last but not least, 4 members of the Proud Boys, including their former leader, were convicted of sedition for attacking the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, 2021. Big whoop. Last week, the South Korean president visited the U.S., but it seems that his foreign policy of aligning his country more closely with the U.S. and Japan has deepened the misgivings of the South Korean public. Can you blame them? The South Korean government was only just this week found guilty of justifying and encouraging the prostitution of South Korean women, or so-called comfort girls, to maintain its military alliance with the U.S. and earn American dollars. Is there even a word for government-scale pimping? Not a good look, folks. Moving on to other news, Ding Liren won the World Chess Championship, a first for China. And, in a rare show of unity, the UN Security Council condemned the Taliban's treatment of women. About time they did something right. In Paraguay, they elected a conservative economist as president, resisting Latin America's recent leftward shift. Meanwhile, a prominent Palestinian prisoner died after a hunger strike in an Israeli prison, and Palestinian leaders and armed groups are threatening retaliation. And finally, some news relating to artificial intelligence. Neuroscientists from the University of Texas, Austin, have developed AI models that can translate people's private thoughts without using implants, as if we don't have enough invasion of privacy already. And the godfather of AI left Google and warned of the technology's risks. But maybe he's being a little too alarmist, right? It's not like someone might mimic your identity, your voice, and make a puppet of yourself that ridicules you for all eternity. Well, that's all from me, folks. But please share, subscribe, and hit that notifications bell. If you would like us to make any special episodes, please leave some comments below. You've been watching the Ministry of Propaganda, helping you think.
All right, we are live. So good evening. Hello, everyone. And yes, the circus is over. Zadok the priest has spoken. King Charles III, King Charles Saxe Coburg Gothenburg, as his real surname is now officially the king of the United Kingdom and a bunch of other countries. So, Chris, did you take the oath of allegiance? So you're now a subject of King Charles III?
Shockingly, I did not. It was actually quite cringeworthy to even float the idea. I'm actually surprised that Charles went for it. Obviously, they actually changed the text of the oath, didn't they? So we'll go through that in a little bit. But What a cringeworthy affair, to be honest. I think everybody other than Piers Morgan absolutely thought it was a little bit embarrassing.
Right. So on the specifics, I mean, just for the people watching and listening, the Duke of, not the Duke, sorry, what's his name? The priest, the head priest, the Canterbury. What's his name? I forgot. Bishop. I've gone blank. His actual title. Sorry, Archbishop of Canterbury. Right. Yes. So the Archbishop of Canterbury, the head of the Church of England, the man who ran the ceremony of King Charles's coronation, had this idea, along with everyone else, that they would think, oh, let's get our viewers, everyone who's watching this coronation, to participate at home. You at home can participate by taking a small little oath of allegiance to King Charles III. Of course, royalists did. I'm sure they did sit in their houses with their Union Jack hats and flags and all sorts of paraphernalia and do it. But a lot of people were not quite happy with that. And I think the Financial Times actually wrote quite a funny little comment. They said, in the classic sort of British way, they asked, oh, you can take part. And then when people started saying, what, you're not telling me what to do in my own house, I said, okay, well, if you fancy, if you want, you don't have to. So they made the point of saying that, so in the classic British way that, they would only the British would only take part if you didn't make it very clear. And so, begrudgingly sort of said, if you want, you can take an oath, in the nature of oaths, that's like always compelling. But anyway,
it's not really quite how oaths generally work.
Right,
swear an allegiance if you want to.
If you want to swear allegiance.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, but I mean, there's a lot to unpack with this one. It was quite, I mean, to be honest, I think my main takeaway was how we transcended reality, and like in many different places, just what we were saying and what we were doing and where we were and who was there. Just so many times we just stopped living in reality, and we were just witnessing a show. I mean, it was quite the spectacle. I mean, some of the singing and stuff, I did enjoy some of the singing. I won't lie, it was quite powerful. Some of the choir and whatever, but also we just transcended reality.
But to say you get caught up in it, that's what it's for. It's like one of those sort of general statements when people sort of say, like, I don't mean to bring up the Nazis 2 minutes into a conversation, but when people say, like obviously I don't like Hitler, but the uniforms were cool. It's like, well, that's the point. They were designed that way. They were, we don't think less of you for getting caught up in something that's designed to make you get caught up in it. But it's by the pure design. That's what it's for. This imperial, regal sort of feeling to it. To be honest, the outfits of it were one of the weakest points. I thought it was like, if you got your outfits from the Disney store, like, I thought his outfit, he looked like a clown, like a mix of like. Someone pointed out that he was wearing the exact same thing from Snoke from the new Star Wars films, like gold outfit. I thought there's so many pictures of him with his lapels on in this military imperial uniform. I thought, why go with that? That looks better than what you ended up wearing. Yeah,
you mean the purple thing or the gold thing?
Yeah, both.
Both.
They look like
those were crap.
Those
were really crap. Yeah. No. I did think that the purple thing that he wore on the balcony looked weird, and like a bad sort of a rental from a sort of kids theater production company. And the golden robe too. On the particular sort of channel that I was watching, that was quite sort of pro-royalist kind of news. I don't know which channel it was, but they described the gold robe as being quite simple.
A simple
solid gold jacket robe thing. Yeah, just a simple gold jacket. But,
I'm not sure how those two things very rarely come together.
So one of the things that we're talking about, this whole transcending and just ignoring reality. What were your thoughts on? You had this scene where there was a glove given by the Muslim community. There was a bracelet given by the Jews. There was a this given by the Sikhs, and a that given by the Hindus. And then you had our Prime Minister, who is a Hindu, giving out, reading from the Bible, and now the Church of England, sort of the head of the Church of England, King. Like someone I was watching with said, basically, this is kind of like someone saying, And God says, bless all other religions, said the Hindu man in the church. It was just bizarre. The contradictions of sort of, what is the fourth commandment? It's thou shalt not worship any other God apart from me. So I felt there was a bit of an incompatibility with this whole thing, or a ridiculous thing.
Well, if we're going to go into religion, I mean, do not worship graven images. I mean, that literally what this day was about. Prince Charles was the ultimate graven image of worship, and so it was a bizarre day. But what you've just sort of said he's meant to be the protector of the faith, of the British faith, which is the Church of England, which for any our international viewers who don't really understand, the Church of England is when you're a Catholic, but you want to break away from the Pope to remarry, so you start your own church. It's literally an excuse to remarry. And but for some reason we've adopted it as a completely valid branch of Christianity, which is quite bizarre when you actually look at what it is. But it felt like how Piers Morgan sort of compares him, of bringing the country together, of using Rishi Sunak as some sort of ambassador of Hinduism, because Hinduism's not a unified religion. As anyone who is Hindu will tell you, it's not a religion. It's like 1,000 different religions, small sector. It's basically Indian paganism in the broadest sense of the word pagan, of a religion that has more than one deity. That's what Hinduism is when you're referring to it. So they're sort of just using Rishi Sunak as a stand-in Pope of Hinduism to represent all British Hindus, and I'm not sure British Hindus particularly cared about the coronation, as probably did Britain's 1-point-something% of its Jewish population, or 10% of Muslim population. This wasn't a day for them. This was a day for Good Morning TV viewers. And
I mean, okay, on a superficial level, it was good, or at least, yes, on a very superficial level, good PR to try and include everyone, multicultural Britain, and all that.
That's what it was. It was PR.
It was PR. Yeah. And the gospel choir, with that sort of, I think the quote, the phrase I heard was, the first time that gospel music had been used in this ceremony. Sure. So, on the face of it, we know it's quite obvious what they were doing. They were trying to be inclusive.
Well, because the last coronation took place in a time period where black people still had to sit at the back of the bus. So there's no surprise there that gospel wasn't played over the last coronation here.
Yeah. Right. And they were busy killing Mau people in Kenya.
Yeah.
And all of the other colonies too. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think just from the Financial Times, they said that 2/5, so talking about the British public, 2/5 thought it was a waste of taxpayer money. 2/3 didn't care about it very much or at all, mainly because basically we had a glut of royal pageantry in the past year because of Elizabeth II's platinum and then her funeral in September. So that's according to Financial Times. So not exactly an overwhelming outpouring of support. I mean, there was, the Mall, the long road where they saw the balcony, that was full of people. Yeah. But I did think that it wasn't.
As it would be. I mean, like, the question, do you care about the coronation? That a care can be in the positive, or a care is just of interest. I care about the coronation. I don't care about the monarchy. I care about the coronation and the fact that it cost this money in the middle of a cost of living crisis. That's it's of interest. I'm not wishing him well. I don't wish it happened, but I care about this event and the interest in the day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, people also kind of forced, like you just said, I don't care about it. Well, you're spending millions of it and it's in my face. And people living in London have to divert traffic, and everyone else is watching. Okay, I guess I'll have to take part. So it's almost attracts its own gravity in a sense. So genuine interest is hard to measure, actually. Because of the gravity of it. I mean, I watched it, and I'm not a big fan of the Saxe Coburg Göteborgs. As I think you mentioned the Frankie Boyle. If anyone hasn't seen, Frankie Boyle made a really good small documentary called, I think it's Farewell to the Royals, or
Farewell to the Monarchy.
Farewell to the Monarchy. It's on YouTube. Please go watch it. It's brilliant.
Yes.
And he does a really good description of the royal family as a slightly dim German family, which I think is
Britain's most boring cartel.
yeah. But he also does make some other good observations. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so I think it's sort of gauging the public sort of interest in this. That there's been some interesting statistics that's come out, and it's been interesting seeing the change in public attitude. So one thing I've noticed in the BBC's coverage in the past few weeks, for instance, there was an article that I read the other day where it was talking about the upcoming coronation. 3 paragraphs it took them to start talking about the group Republic, who are a pro-Republic campaign group in the UK. And regardless of the contents of the article, the fact that it mentioned the opposition 3 paragraphs in, that would have never happened under Elizabeth. They wouldn't. I can't even ever remember reading about Republic under Elizabeth. It seems that under Charles, because the public mood has completely changed, now wherever he goes, there is a small, it is small, but there is a contingent of protesters. It's not, everyone's now seeing the yellow signs, not my king. And that never happened under Elizabeth. And I think that is something that's very important. It's easily explainable on the fact that, because as a Republican myself, and as you are, we all knew that Queen Elizabeth was very popular. So it was almost a moot point trying to protest, because you weren't going to get the response that you wanted. You were going to get, generally from the public, an overwhelming negative response. I always compared the Queen to like that elastic band ball that you'd have at your desk that you knew at one point you had to throw it away, but you just wanted to see how big it got out of curiosity. And that was what the Queen was to me. After she got to a certain age, she was like, well, let's not abdicate this one. I just want to see how long she lasts. And we've had it, we've had our fun, but it's time to throw the ball away now. It's getting dirty.
Right. Yeah, I think, even in some of the assessments by ostensibly sort of, I wouldn't call them overtly Republican, but sort of you'd think they were most likely royalists or just people that wanted to keep a status quo. So like the Financial Times and the Times and others. There's a quote here from the Times, the Financial Times, which says basically, on their conclusion of the coronation and their projection of where it's going to go. They say, nothing prepared us for the coronation, but the coronation has prepared us for what is to come, a monarch who may never reach the acclaim of Elizabeth II, but who will nonetheless definitely funnel 2 millennia of tradition, blah, 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 blah. But they know, they've already kind of said in their assessment, he is not going to get to her level. And effectively then that says, this is going to be a weak monarch. This is going to be someone who doesn't get as much support. And stability, the long-term stability of the monarchy then is drawn into question, or more likely to draw into question.
I still think in a political term, we'd call, as you would a president in his last term, a lame duck president. This is a lame duck king.
Yeah. I do think that, I still think we might see, one more coronation, maybe two. I don't know. It depends. It's hard to predict the future in a crystal ball moment, but it's certainly not a brighter future. Today, things are not getting brighter for the monarchy.
No. It's almost a guarantee that this is going to be at least the first of 2 coronations in this decade, because he's an old man. He's the oldest coronated king.
It's got good, the genetic side. He's got a 96-year-old mother, grandfather, and father is in 90s. Maybe with all that money, that they have from us. But I agree with you. It's still a man in his 80s is not a safe pair of hands.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So I have got a few clips here that I just wanted to show, just to show sort of public mood, how it's moved. And it does seem to be a generational thing, which is to be expected. The older generation, it's hard to sort of change your ways, isn't it? And they've got a view set in tradition. So first one is from our good friend Piers Morgan. His shock and awe.
King Charles will be a global spectacle. Tens of millions will be watching as Charles is crowned in a ceremony steeped in 1,000 years of regal history. But judging by the headlines this week, the monarchy's problems lie not in the past, but the future. A shocking new poll says 78% of Britain's young people don't care about the monarchy. Almost 40% of them would even prefer an elected head of state. And actually, who can blame them for having a dim view of the royal family or the monarchy, given that two of our most famous young royals have waged a 3-year war on the institution? They've weaponized the culture of validation for victimhood and convinced a generation of young people that the monarchy is an antiquated, evil institution.
So straight away there he's got the blame in the wrong direction. In his view, the reason that anyone could be anti-royal is it's Meghan's fault. It's all Meghan's fault in his head, which just clearly isn't true. What about you, Rich? Have you got this view of him because of your time reading Prince Harry's book or Meghan?
I'm actually busy. I'm reading. I'm just like a few chapters into Harry's book. I started. Actually, I bought it because I was like, I've got to see this. I want to see the dirty laundry. Air the dirty laundry. Show me the dirty laundry. It's somewhat interesting so far, but like I said, only a few chapters in. I just also think that Piers Morgan automatically then there would sort of implied that the reason that the young generation don't like the royal family is because of Harry and Meghan, and basically because they're woke. It's just SJW, wokeists, which are just classic Piers Morgan. But I think Jeremy Corbyn was also very popular with young people. Jeremy Corbyn is not exactly. He was always getting in trouble with not being too supportive of the monarchy, and questions about whether he would bow, do this or do that or whatever. I think that you have to look at a much bigger trend there. Jeremy Corbyn is popular. Why? Well, because millennials can't buy houses. Millennials.
I don't think anybody would call Jeremy Corbyn woke. As much as you'd call Jerry Adams woke for the same reason.
Right.
Was the IRA woke?
I think that
Meghan Merkel.
Right. I mean, and also, millennials and sort of this younger generation, if we're called that anymore, I guess, also supported Bernie Sanders more than the previous. So you've got a big overlying economic trend. 2008, the financial crash. Our generation then, have been poorer and will be poorer. The first generation to be poorer than the last. So those are the underlying macroeconomic things, right? So that's why you have people not really keen on an antiquated, elitist aristocracy that inherits huge amounts of wealth. I mean, some of these royals, like the Duke of Westminster, who owns Harrods and owns, along with the rest of the royals, owns huge swathes of the country. And I think he just inherited, I think it might be a few years out, but 5 or 6, maybe 7 years ago, his father died and he just inherited just huge tracts of real estate. And here you've got millennials who can't even buy a house and probably will never buy a house.
Royals as well, they're exempt from inheritance tax, unlike the rest of us.
Yeah, which they managed to, if you haven't watched the Queen episode when the Queen passed, we looked at the royal family. And in that episode, we did explore this thing of the fact that the royal family, the Queen at the time, overlooked draft papers that were going to be in Parliament regarding inheritance laws and had their say and altered and actually stopped some laws, particularly on land and how to use their estates and inheritance. So you have the people who would be subject to inheritance laws having a say on what gets passed. That's it's a fact.
Which in itself is completely contrary to everyone's understanding of constitutional law in the UK, of this defense of, they're harmless, they do more good than bad, and they don't interfere with politics. When they do. They do absolutely interfere with politics.
Yeah, they do.
Particularly Charles, who was famously for the Black Spider memos. If anyone doesn't know, they were called the Black Spider memos because Charles's handwriting was referred to as looking like spider legs on paper. So that's how we knew he'd written them.
Wait, I don't know much about this. So go into
these were letters that were written to ministers that basically came out from Freedom of Information disclosure request from The Guardian back in 2005. It went through the courts for about 10 years of ministers trying to block it. And basically it showed that Charles had been lobbying ministers, interfering in politics. The contents of them was quite boring and mundane. A lot of it requests on behalf of farmers and stuff, but that's not the point. The point is that he shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. Now, with Elizabeth, a lot of her popularity was because she was so muted of opinion. Everyone put their own opinion onto her. If you were pro-EU, you could say, well, the Queen is secretly pro-EU. If you were pro-Brexit, you could say, well, the Queen is secretly pro-Brexit. She was wherever you wanted her to be. But with Charles, there isn't that veneer of neutrality, because he does come out on one side of opinion rather than the other. So it is much easier for people to sort of dislike. If you want to be a mutual head of state, you have to be neutral.
Right. So just going back to Piers Morgan, you mentioned earlier, obviously, I think we answered the question as to like whether we think that's a sound analysis. That no, he's missing a bigger point. But he also just let something slip, which a lot of people have been throwing around, is the 1,000-year monarchy, so as if it was uninterrupted, as if history has never happened. So I mean, the first thing you're completely ignoring there is Henry VIII himself. So the fact that Catholicism and the Pope used to play far more of a role within the way that the royals ran the country and everything, the royal system, and then the Civil War itself. Actually, so I mean, we'll get onto sort of some of the stuff within the ceremony itself in a moment. But the only surviving item from before the Civil War, excluding the chair and some other stuff, but in terms of like little bits and bobs that are used in the actual ceremony itself, is one of the spoons.
Yes.
So there's that spoon. That's the only spoon that actually survives from before the Civil War, because during the Civil War, they melted Parliament, melted everything down, trying to get rid of all of this crap. But yeah, so Piers Morgan and countless other people that are talking about this go, the 1,000-year tradition, implying that it's uninterrupted and continuous, which is not true, which is historically inaccurate. I mean, it completely
it's not one bloodline. We've killed them once.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, actually, also, you couldn't pick a better sort of royal to remind yourself than a Charles. Charles III. What about the other Charles? Oh, the one that was in the Civil War, that was killed, executed by the people of Britain. There's a bit of a, particularly because these people are talking about history as well, and they're saying, you've got to keep tradition and history, but they don't actually care about history because they're completely ignoring to mention that part of history, the Republican Party.
It's a myth of history that they're building that doesn't exist, as they do with many things, like when they talk about sort of the Roman history, and in the British education system, they've got a big affinity to Roman history. They speak about it in such romanticized sexual terms because the British Empire want to conflate themselves with that empire. Yeah, we're almost like we're the successor of. Like the empire died here, and we were born from the ashes of that empire, which, from a certain slant of history, it's true in the fact that we built ourselves from the infrastructure that the Romans built for us. As Caesar pointed out when he first arrived here, we were savages who danced around trees, and there wasn't really very much here.
Yeah, right.
Interestingly, he also pointed out that the people here had black faces, which modern DNA testing has proved, like the Cheddar Man, that we were the inhabitants of this island was black. Modern British historians try to get rid of that fact, but it seems to be very much the truth that Britain back then, before the Romans got here, the natives were black.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Not the woad? Was it sort of beyond just paints and woad and stuff? Or
well, Cheddar Man, when they've done the test on him, that the models are always painted as black. So
interesting. Okay, well, that's very interesting. I did not know that.
Big if true.
Interesting. Big if true. Yeah. I know that we've got to talk about, some of the ridiculous stuff in the ceremony itself. So I know we talked about a Hindu conferring the head of the Church of England a religion which doesn't accept the validity of other gods, and then all sorts of objects being worn given by other religious groups. We've already talked about this, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I wanted to go into. So just to briefly touch on this, the crowns themselves. So we covered this thoroughly in our Queen the Institution Reviewed episode. But
Yes.
just to remind people, you had a number of the notorious diamonds in this ceremony. So you had, of course, Cullinan 1, which is the 530 carat diamond, which is in the sovereign scepter. So the stick that he's holding has Cullinan 1, massive diamond. And then you have Cullinan 2, which is 317 carats, which was in the imperial state crown that Charles will wear as he leaves Westminster Abbey. Okay, so that's the one he wore as he left. Another big diamond, if I'm not mistaken, it's the clear diamond at the front of his crown. But what we didn't see this time was the Koh-i-Noor. So this is the diamond from India. Well, actually, India, Pakistan, and Iran all claim this diamond. That is in another crown, which, one second, I forgot I can't remember which crown it is, but basically that one was not on show. They did not use it in this ceremony. So they used a different crown. They used, the smaller crown. So they didn't use that one. I wonder if there was a political choice, having a Hindu prime minister, around, and also just trying to patch things up with, on the geopolitical side of things, with India and AUKUS and the Quad and the geopolitical game and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I also think that just because of it's just a more controversial diamond somehow than the Cullinan. But they have to wear one of these crowns. They just have to pick which blood they would like to, adorn themselves in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It made me sort of think that when this was all being planned, originally they did say, oh, it's going to be a much more toned down coronation, because basically they're worried that because of the cost of living crisis, they don't want to intentionally annoy everybody with this lavish display of stolen wealth. I've got here a picture which I'm just going to have to get this up. This just made me laugh because it sort of summarizes what's actually been going on here. So here's a carriage, and these are potholes in the streets that have just been covered with sand to allow the carriage to move freely over it. And that just sort of sums up the state of the country. The fact that this gilded bandage that has just been wrapped around London to mask a country that's effectively in decay at this point. I mean, I don't think anybody, from ourselves to the IMF to everyone, nobody's saying that this country is doing well. We're a dying country at the moment economically.
It's not looking good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I thought this sums it up just quite nicely.
I think that's a great one. I think it's a great one. I mean, actually, I guess we'll go into this now. Some of the obscure and bizarre things that you start to find out when you look not even that closely at the royal family, the wider royal family, as well as just the individuals themselves. Yeah. So, you already said a gilded carriage sanded over potholes, and then them not showing one of the other crowns because they think this crown might be better. All of this is stolen. These people aren't even British. Sorry. They're German, or some combination of aristocratic hybrid. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so the opening line from the Bishop of Canterbury was something along the lines of, what was it? He comes here not to serve, but to be served. Kind of trying to caveat this whole thing around, this is service, public service. I am a public servant. Yeah, anointed not to be served, but to serve. So some of the things around Prince Charles's personal habits and weird things, right? Okay, so for example, he's a big environmentalist, and before he became king, I did, appreciate his sort of quite he didn't actually have to take quite the stance on climate change and stuff, and I think that was quite good of him, I guess. Well done. Yeah,
it's a way of approaching environmentalism, though. Not all environmentalism is good for people. Pol Pot was an environmentalist.
Right. But I mean, he could have taken a far worse stance. He could have just been indifferent about it. At least he drove and advanced a conversation about environmentalism that was, I guess, somewhat good. But in line with trying to become a good environmentalist, and I'm going to show you this article because I think people are not going to believe me. To make himself, fit that kind of environmentalist, outfit, he drives an Aston Martin, and I am not joking, that is fueled by cheese and wine. So this is from The Guardian. So Prince Charles reveals his car runs on cheese and wine byproducts. I believe it's some form of English white wine and some whey from other cheese.
Oh, at least it's English. I personally looted by Wellington from the palaces of Versailles.
yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah. No, at least it's English white wine, which, if we're honest, is probably not the best white wine. But yes, he has a car run by cheese and wine. Cheese and wine. It's the fuel. So yeah, other stuff. Wherever he goes, he travels with a teddy bear that he has since he was a small child. I don't think that's too bad. But the only person allowed to fix the bear is his childhood nanny. I have no idea how old she is. She must be really old.
Who's kept on life support?
Yeah, she's in addition to carrying a small teddy bear wherever he goes, that's okay. I'm not too bad. That's kind of cute, right? But he also carries his orthopedic bed and his own lavatory seat. So speaking about thrones, he literally carries his own toilet seat to wherever he's going to stay. So, yeah. And then the final one is he always has a chef come with him. So wherever he goes, he has a personal chef cook for him. So he goes to your house, wherever you are, wherever he's visiting, his chef will cook for him his own meal.
That I don't find it's too I think most heads of states have their own. I think it's a security thing as well, isn't it?
I suppose so. I mean, but if you can't trust, the American chefs, I mean,
yeah.
But the last one I'll say, and this applied to the Queen too. So him and Queen Elizabeth II both would prefer heavily not to be served square ice cubes because of the weird noise they make.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't like the clinking noise of ice cubes, square ice cubes. I don't know. I guess they might go for, maybe skull-shaped. That would probably suit their history.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go. I come not to be served your food or your ice cubes. I come to serve.
Yeah. It does make me laugh, the lengths that they go through of this sort of myth of humbleness that they sort of try and paint. I have got another clip here that goes perfectly into this. So I wanted to play this last time, only I struggled to find it. Unfortunately, the only clip that I've found, I couldn't get the original source. So I've stolen the clip from a John Oliver show. So unfortunately, it has his stupid audience giggling in the background. So this is an interview from Philip from 1968 from ITV. And I think it's an incredibly uncomfortable amount of time to answer any questions, particularly this one. So I'm just going to play this.
Go on.
Your job in your own mind?
Well, I haven't got one. I'm self-employed.
But surely you must have some clear idea of what role you fulfill in modern society.
It's very difficult to answer.
You think?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
If I was a royal being interviewed, I would have thought that would be the first question that my aides prepped me for. If someone asks you what your job, say this. That should be number one.
Yeah. Also, he was, royal for a long time. And I don't think he doesn't look particularly young there. You'd think all that training, all that PR, all of that stuff, you'd have something ready, to give.
But he was a royal before he was our royal, wasn't he? He was
true. Yeah, Greek.
So he'd always been around. Maybe it was just in the 60s, it was a new sort of era of journalism where maybe this was the first time a journalist had ever dared ask a royal, what is your job? Like, I can't imagine Victoria was ever asked that question. But then again, I can't imagine she was ever interviewed by a journalist. I might be wrong, but I can't imagine that was the case back then.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think if you watch, I don't know if you've seen the Netflix series The Crown.
I haven't yet. It is on a very long list.
I've started watching it again, sort of in line of what's been happening recently with the royals and whatnot. There is a scene where I don't know if they're reenacting this just with a different environment, but yes, they go through the scene where an Australian journalist asks this question and he gets angry. Yeah, but so I think it's clearly definitely happened. You've seen it. Yeah. But actually, in line with that observation, what do you really do? And everyone always makes the jokes, that I go somewhere and I wave and I do the wave, and I'm seen as a stable pair of hands. In line also with the fact that reality stopped meaning things and words stopped meaning anything in parts of this ceremony. Princess Anne, so this is Charles's sister, who I guess from probably quite an early age realized that she was never going to be the head of state, and is, as many of these royals that end up on the side start doing weird stuff and start going crazy. She, in this ceremony, got a lot of attention because she wore a massive hat, like a Napoleon-style massive hat with a red feather. Did you see her or not?
Yeah, I saw that she was blocking Harry.
That's it. Everyone was happy because, apparently Harry's, evil now and it's doomed, been banished. He was banished to the third row with the cousins and the sex predators, Andrew. I think he had the same row as him. But yeah, just if you haven't seen the hat, let me just show you the hat here. It is, I mean, it's a really cool hat, but it is absolutely ridiculous. There you go. There it is. From the side, it looks more powerful, I won't lie, but it's got a massive red feather. And this thing was blocking Harry's view, which everyone thinks
very Napoleonic.
Right. I mean, her outfit was pretty cool. I'll give her that. It was a very cool outfit, if you're dressing up. But nonetheless, she also, so I just did some reading then about her title. So, because everyone goes, when you're not first in line or second in line of the throne, like, what are you doing? So often they'll get given honorary sort of ceremonial heads of regiments. So, for example, my old regiment was the Duke of Wellington Regiment. 3 Yorks, first York, 1 Yorks was Prince Andrew was the head of the honorary colonel, I think, of the battalion, even though he never did anything. And we also had the honor of saluting him once. It was wonderful back in 2012. But anyway, nonetheless, Princess Anne in 1993 was given the rank of Rear Admiral and was recently upgraded to an Admiral. But not only that, she's also a general in the British Army and an Air Chief Marshal in the Royal Air Force. So, I mean, what does anything mean? I'm a general, I'm an admiral, I'm a chief air marshal, and I'm wearing Napoleon's hat. It's just like a child. This is like a little 5-year-old sort of just saying, I'm everything, basically.
Yeah. It's funny because it's that type of sort of, it's nepotism, but it is just a fanciful version of nepotism. This type of stuff that people accuse North Korea of doing. Down to the pledges, down to the just giving your family members ranks.
Yeah. No, it's it is madness, absolute madness. Yeah, do you want me to comment on any other sort of bits of the ceremony?
So one thing that did make me laugh, which I'm sure there's again a very long traditional reason for it, but when he was anointed behind the curtain, it felt like that bit was literally just like let's fuck with everybody now. Let's allow conspiracy theories to fly. Like that's the bit where he just morphed into a lizard behind the king.
Yeah. Oh no.
Just keep things alive and spicy.
I would have bet £10 that there's some video analysis going on right now in like QAnon circles or
David Icke.
What's that lunatic? David Icke. Yeah, David Icke video channels where they've like, if you see now, you'll see the shadow of a tail and sort of maybe flicking.
I've already seen one start on Facebook. There was a guy who walks past outside the cathedral. You just see a silhouette, and it did look like the Grim Reaper just walked past, and a big shadowy figure holding. So obviously that's been fine. I think it was all part of the show just to like keep people interested.
Just to wind it up. Yeah. I mean, I was also thinking everyone. Yeah, go ahead.
So just sort of going back onto what Pierce's sort of question was. of why young people aren't interested. That's what sort of joking about are all these little pantomime tricks, little things just to get people sharing videos on Facebook and the places where young people gather. But it's because young people, particularly us in our generation, we were born into a world where basically the internet was pretty much established from the age where we could use computers. We were connected to each other, to foreign cultures and to different political systems from a much younger age. Our parents weren't. They were born in a traditional conservative Britain where things were just done this way and everyone abroad did things weird and foreign, but you never saw it. And we were born in this in a time where we expected more. So we can question these silly things in a way that our parents never did. Why giving us the answer of we've always done it this way just doesn't cut it anymore. And in terms of like some little bits of social progress that we've made, that was even little things that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, like people's views on tattoos and piercings. Of you would have probably heard it. Oh, don't get a tattoo, you'll never get a job. That's just not the case now. You can go into a bank and see someone head to toe covered in tattoos and piercings and with a shirt and tie on. Our views of things like that have changed. And I think this is the same issue, just a different side of it. We look at this and think, why are we paying for this? People say, oh, it's continuity. Or the worst one, what Piers Morgan says, is it brings us together. So, well, evidently not, because I'm arguing with you. If I disagree with you, then obviously your argument doesn't work because I'm not with you. I'm not all together with this. And as the polls have showed, half of the country isn't. And just to sort of compare this, as we said earlier on, with the Republican movement hasn't been campaigning because we didn't out of politeness because of Elizabeth's popularity. We're already at nearly half of young people don't support it without us even campaigning. If you were to compare this where sort of something like Scottish independence was in the 90s when it was still quite new, when they really started campaigning and that's where it skyrocketed in popularity in a very short period of time. I see that will happen now with the Republican movement. Now it's in the public eye. It's talked about in every article that the Royals are talked about in. There'll be an article there about the opposition and the other way. It's not as set in stone as it used to be.
Yeah. No, I think it is a good opportunity for the Republican movement. Yeah. I do think that there's still a lot of work to be done on the actual that specific organization itself. They didn't do a bad job, and they were arrested, and there was beatings, and the Met Police basically didn't tolerate. That's the word they used. They didn't tolerate any trouble on the day. But basically, that meant we're going to try and reduce your protests and reduce your footprint on the day. But I still think that they particularly need to be a bit more professional. They do come across as a bit of an NGO, sort of Extinction Rebellion kind of level. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean to promote this particular group. It's just that this is the group that
the general movement. Right. Yeah.
Now we should do it. Now, even left-wing parties, like there are so many left-wing parties in this country that don't even dare call themselves Republicanism or Republicanism. What actually annoyed me last year was when Elizabeth died, even George Galloway posted on his Facebook a picture with him with Elizabeth behind him. I was like, bloody hell, if you are bowing to monarchism, then he's one of the most famous, furthest left politicians in the country. And not even he dared to sort of break ranks with British monarchism. And it just showed that how far there is to go.
Yeah. No, there's a really far way to go. You're right. I mean, and I was going to say, Greg, if there was any politician you'd expect to try and move that direction quickly, you would expect Galloway. And the Keir Starmer, obviously, threw his lot. I think he posted an article. I think it might have been The Guardian, putting his lot, behind King Charles III. But I do think that he did. At least, not a fan of him at all. But this thing with the Lords of this motion, I don't know if he's continued with it or he's going to push it, but even suggesting that there shouldn't be a House of Lords might be a little bit of movement on undermining the aristocratic sort of institutions.
I think the House of Lords, though, it's such easy low-hanging fruit, isn't it? Because anybody with a basic understanding of it, thinks, well, it's absolutely ridiculous that this is even there. The fact that we can have a vote in one house and it be undermined in another house by people who aren't elected, who are appointed, is ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, often it's classic Keir Starmer, though, to just go for the strategically, clever sort of, okay, I'll keep the monarchy vote by not going for the monarchy, and I'll capture a bit of that young dissent against the aristocratic class as a whole by just picking the sort of, as you say, low-hanging fruit.
It's one of those sort of statements that nobody can disagree with. Like, I think nurses should be paid well. It's like, everybody agrees that as a statement.
Well done.
It's like, I don't think we should kick pregnant women. Like, well done. Everyone agrees with that very basic statement. I'm not going to vote for you for saying complete nonsense.
It's visionary. It's visionary stuff. I just want to get back to. So I think on the Republican stuff, we are going to see a growth, and this is not the end of that conversation. Just in terms of some of the arguments, I did read Republic's website, and they make some good observations. So one of the classic points that people bring up is tourism. The monarchy is good for tourism. So we should substitute our head of state and have this entire aristocratic system because of tourism. And go into the Republic website. There's republic.org, the specific organization. And they give you some details there about how this is a flawed statistic, flawed argument. But I do think they didn't make this observation, but it's my observation. Disneyland, attracts lots of tourists. Does that mean Mickey Mouse should be the head of state now because of tourism? No. It's really weak.
It is
and also, people still go to the Palace of Versailles. Lots of tourists go there. There's no royal family there. So the palaces, which are where you get all the tickets and the tourism, are still there. So I'm not suggesting any comparison between how the royal family and Palace of Versailles are treated. But
the next clip that I've got is exactly on this issue. So Sky News, we're trying to find dissidents against the Republican movement. Obviously, like we've already said, Republic as a group are quite tame compared to what you'd want them to be. So I found a clip that Sky News posted of a woman confronts anti-monarchist protesters, and this is the weakest confrontation that you've ever imagined. But the points that she brings up are exactly what you've just brought up. So I'm just going to show this quickly, and then we can go over some numbers.
Who are you think how much money they brought into this country just here? They bring more money into the country than anything else.
Well, I mean, the palaces will still be there.
They don't.
They do. Look, when Harry got married, it cost so much. There was over 100,000 people went to Windsor to see that wedding. They had to pay accommodation, they had to transport, they made a fortune.
They take annual rents of like 30% of the land.
I'm telling you.
They cost us 300 million per year.
I studied
every
it,
taxpayer.
and they bring more money into this country than anything else. When I go abroad and I say, where are you going to go? Everybody wants to go to London to see Buckingham Palace.
The palace will still be there.
I know, but they won't come see because there's no king. I mean, my daughter's come over.
There we go. That was the point that you just made. The palace will still be there. In fact, you'll have better access to it. Now, I've got the numbers here. So the Palace of Versailles, 10 million people visit that per year. The Forbidden City in China gets 19 million people per year. Famously, palaces where the royals do not hold residence anymore. We could actually increase tourism to the palace by getting rid of its occupants. Who would have thought it?
Yeah. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Buckingham Palace is also 9th most visited tourist destination. Chester Zoo has more people visited. So yes, both Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace, Chester Zoo has more people. So maybe we should put some animal from Chester Zoo as our head of a state then. According to the logic.
Or put our royals in the zoo.
That's even better. I mean, Charlie's ears, right? I mean, I don't know. I can think of an attraction he would be suitable for. Anyway, so anyway, I just wanted to go on to some of the small things in the ceremony. I know we've gone back and forth, but it's okay. is the chair. So the chair, as I said earlier, the spoon is the last remaining item of the coronation regalia. Everything else was melted down. But the chair is from the 1300s, if I'm not mistaken. But if you look at the chair, it used to be covered in gold carrot. That's been worn away. But there's some graffiti on it, and some of the graffiti is just quite, quite fun. One of them says, just says, P. Abbott slept in this chair 5-6 July 1800. It's quite silly. And then there's in the chair, so inside the chair is the stone of scone, which is spelt scone or scone. We now have a third pronunciation, scone, which is the sacred slab of sandstone on which Scottish kings were crowned. Edward I had the chair built specifically to enclose the stone of scone, known by the Scots as the Stone of Destiny, after he forcibly took the artifact from Scotland and moved it to the abbey in the late 13th century.
Of course, yeah.
But Fergus Macarc, excuse my pronunciation, I think it's an Irish name, the founder of Scotland's royal line, reputedly brought the stone with him when he moved his seat from Ireland to Scotland around 498. So, I mean, you can't think of a more British stone than that. Something that was from Ireland, then moved to Scotland, then stolen from Scots, and then closed to capture its essence.
Yeah.
So
we can't give it back without destroying the thing that it's now enclosed in.
Yeah. We can't give it back. It's just part of the museum. So I mean, yeah. Anyway, but yeah. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is interesting to see where it goes. I remember we ended this last episode with a lot of speculation to the future, which has been half of this episode. And it is interesting to sort of think of where it's going to be going. At the moment, we've got this cost of living crisis that's going on. That's absolutely causing huge amounts of suffering to so many people in this country. I don't feel like this toned down coronation has done much to alleviate that. I've not noticed any pennies being knocked off my bill because Charles didn't spend it. Interestingly, what we said earlier on about Harry, you said that you were reading his book. Now, I did watch his interview that he did with Stephen Colbert on the American show. For the same reason as you reading his book, just tell me dirt. And the one thing that I felt was missing about the interview, which was something that I expected an American to say, was now you've been out of it a while and living in a republic in America, looking back into it, do you not think it's all a bit silly? Are you a Republican yet? How far are you into the book? Has he said anything?
Trust me, I'm nowhere near that. Only about 2 chapters.
Yeah. So that I feel like it would be an interesting sort of point. Because I feel like that's where so many people are. And it is I can't see new Republicans new monarchists being born. It does seem like we're waiting for an older generation to sort of die off and then its support to sort of dwindle. One of the stupider arguments that I've seen some of these protesters, monarchists make, which I don't know, it doesn't seem to be based on any fact, is other countries who have got rid of their royal family regret it. And other than Spain, who got rid of theirs and brought them back, I can't think of anyone else who did. And I've never heard an American say they regret it. I've never met an American monarchist. They've got a big affinity for titles over there because they don't really have the aristocratic class is one sort of above what Americans can hope to ever achieve. Like, however many boards of directors you sit on, however many estates you own, you can never be a lord in America, and that's something that they do pine over that. But that's a different thing than having a king above you.
Yeah. I mean, there is a bit of a soft spot for the royals in the US. I mean, they do like the pageantry and stuff, but I don't think they would want themselves to be ruled again by the royal family. I don't think so. Yeah, they had a pretty intense war about this. So I can't think off the top of my head of a king that's longing to return or something like this. But I'm sure there's probably some obscure historical example, but it just doesn't seem to be the normal trend. To make that an argument seems a bit silly, particularly in modern times. Yeah.
And I do remember hearing at one point of whispers that William didn't even want it. I'm sure that's now changed because now they've been William and Harry have been sort of forcibly split at the hip. William's now being much more groomed by the sort of institution. So even if he did have those thoughts early on, they're probably gone now. He's probably very for his time in the throne himself.
Yeah,
hopefully it'll be a short one.
Right,
short time in the throne, not a short wait.
yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah, yeah. We can only hope. I don't know what else to add to that. I mean, I think we've covered quite a lot of ground here, Chris. I don't know if you have any final thoughts. I'm trying to see if I've missed anything from my notes.
Yeah, well, obviously, I don't really want to have to repeat everything that we said last year. We did quite a thorough review of the royal family just after Elizabeth died. I still do want to harken back to that. Anything that we've not covered here, that video is still valid. So maybe we should be linking that with this one.
Yeah, we'll put that one down in the comments so you can find that one straight away in the description there. I think the only sort of final thought that I'd have from this is I did look at, obviously, American media did write a lot about this. Chinese media, at least the Global Times, Xinhua, and People's Daily, very short. One of them just showed pictures with captions, no article. Just boilerplate diplomacy. Just we congratulate King Charles III on his coronation. The UK is celebrating this. No analysis, no comment beyond that. Just boilerplate. Which says something in itself.
Yeah, it did make me laugh that Reuters had an article up that they tried to write it as if anyone's missing out. Russia, Belarus, Iran, Myanmar, their leaders will not be invited to the coronation. And I'm sure they're gutted.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's it for us in this week, Chris. I do have some other. Okay, the only final thing I would say is Penny Mordant was the woman carrying the sword. I didn't actually realize this until afterwards. So during the ceremony, there's a woman carrying a sword, a massive sword, the first woman to perform this role in history. It's Penny Mordant. So she's obviously quite high up still in the Conservative Party. I just obviously giving her that position to carry the sword does give her lots of political points and credentials. That's quite important.
Maybe you're looking at the next leader of the Conservative Party.
Yeah, I think you've got to. That's definitely raised her profile quite highly.
Yeah.
So
I feel like if I was the one carrying that sword, that little devil on my shoulder would just be saying, if you stab him now, you get to be king. I'm sure that's not how it works.
Right. Anyway, but if you are interested, what happened behind the curtain, all you would have seen is an old man pour oil onto the naked chest of another old man. So I feel like the curtains were more for our protection. Not see that.
Quite lucky that Camilla didn't have to say the same treatment, coming out with an oily boob afterwards.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, I think that's all from us this week. If you have any suggestions or comments or things you'd like us to discuss or look into, we have some interviews coming up. We interviewed, both me and Chris, two Palestinian activists living in exile, I suppose is correct to say. And yeah, we're going to be airing those soon. And then also we're going to have a discussion on that too. But if you have anything else that you want us to go into or go over, perhaps the Turkish election that's coming up, please put them in the comments and we shall see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.